For decades, it's been the absolute epicenter of conspiracy theories, right? A total black hole on the map, just shrouded in mystery. We're talking, of course, about Area 51. So let's get into it.
I mean, this is the question, isn't it? Is it crashed UFOs? Is it aliens? Time travel technology? This is the one question that has fueled so much speculation for generations, turning a quiet patch of desert into a global obsession.
For the longest time, the official answer was just crickets. Nothing. Can you believe the CIA didn't even admit the place existed until 2013? But now, thanks to declassified documents, the silence is broken, and they tell the real story of what's been going on out there.
Okay, so first things first. Before we jump into the declassified facts, we have to talk about the legend. What are all the wild stories that have made this place so famous?
You know the theories. They're literally the stuff of science fiction. Storing and reverse engineering crashed alien ships, studying alien bodies, developing weather control, the whole shebang. These ideas have totally captured our imagination, but they aren't the real secret.
So, let's leave the myths behind and get into the declassified reality. Because the real story, it doesn't start with a crash. It starts with a search. A search for a place to hide something brand new and totally revolutionary.
Back in 1955, the CIA was desperate for a remote, totally secure location. And this quote from the legendary aircraft designer Kelly Johnson just says it all. The dry lake bed was this perfect, natural runway, completely isolated from prying eyes. And get this, he jokingly called it Paradise Ranch to try and convince workers to move to the middle of nowhere.
And right here, this is the key. Area 51, or Groom Lake as it's officially known, was set up for one main reason: to be a secret testing ground for the U-2 spy plane. The whole thing was a classified program called Project Aquatone.
But the U-2 was just the beginning. This timeline really shows how Area 51 became the go-to spot for America's most secret, most advanced aircraft. We're talking everything from the A-12 spy plane to the very first stealth fighter. It's a legacy of amazing earthly technology, not extraterrestrial.
So, if it wasn't aliens, where did all the UFO stories come from? Well, this is where it gets really fascinating, because the base's actual work ended up creating the very legend it was trying to avoid.
Just put yourself in the shoes of an airline pilot in the 1950s. You're cruising along at maybe 20,000 feet, and you look up and see something impossibly high above you, way up at 60,000 feet, catching the sun's rays. That was the U-2. It was so far beyond what was considered possible that, for a lot of people, UFO was the only explanation that made sense.
And then, believe it or not, things got even weirder with the A-12, codenamed Oxcart. It looked even more alien. This quote from an Area 51 veteran just nails it. Imagine seeing a wide, titanium disc blazing across the sky, moving faster than a bullet. Of course, people thought they were seeing flying saucers. And here is where it all clicks into place. Those reports of fiery objects high in the sky, that was the U-2. The flying discs, that was the A-12. In fact, the CIA later admitted that more than half of all UFO reports in the late 50s and 60s were actually their spy planes. The irony is just incredible. The CIA's secrecy created the very monster they were trying to hide from.
But the secrets didn't stop with American planes. One of the biggest secrets at Area 51 wasn't about building our tech, it was about understanding the enemy's tech.
This is where the story takes a really wild turn. What if all that intense secrecy wasn't just to hide our own planes, but to hide planes that belong to our biggest Cold War rival?
Yeah, you heard that right. Through some pretty slick covert ops, the US actually got its hands on Soviet MiG fighter jets. And under these classified projects, with amazing names like Have Donut, American pilots were secretly flying these enemy jets over Nevada to figure out exactly what they were up against.
So, what was the point of all this? Well, flying those MiGs gave US pilots a huge, unbelievable advantage. They could go way beyond just reading a manual. They learned exactly how these planes performed in the air, finding weaknesses you'd never, ever see on paper.
So check this out. In mock dogfights, they discovered the MiG-21 was incredible at turning at lower speeds. So the counter tactic for the American F-4 Phantom was, okay, keep your speed high and use your missile advantage from a distance. This knowledge was so important, it completely changed how American pilots were trained, and yep, it directly led to the creation of the program we all know as Top Gun.
Now, even though these Cold War projects are declassified,
Area 51 is still one of the most secure places on Earth. So why? After all these years, why is there still such a wall of silence?
Well, a really big test of that secrecy came in the 90s. A group of former workers actually sued, claiming they got sick from hazardous materials being burned in open pits at the base. This lawsuit threatened to blow the whole thing wide open.
And the government's response was fast and it was powerful. President Clinton issued what's called a presidential determination, which you can see here. It basically said that Area 51 was exempt from environmental laws if following them meant revealing classified information. So, the lawsuit, it was dismissed. The government used something called the state secrets privilege. They basically argued that revealing anything about what happened at the base, even just what materials were being burned, would put national security at risk, and the courts agreed.
So the secrecy continues because the mission continues. It's really that simple. Area 51 is still the place where America develops and tests its next generation of secret aircraft and weapons, far, far away from the eyes of our adversaries.
You know, when you really pull back the curtain, the story of Area 51 isn't about aliens at all. It's a much more real, and honestly, a much more fascinating story about the high-stakes technological race that basically defined the entire 20th century.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought. The U-2, the A-12, the stealth fighter, they were all science fiction before they were science fact, and they were all tested in secret at Area 51. So it really makes you wonder, what's flying over that desert tonight?